So why use Zoom and Canvas as opposed to just creating your Zoom meeting and sending the link out to your students? It's especially useful if we are in multiple classes because then we can create meetings for each of those specific classes and they'll be sorted that way so that you don't have to worry about mixing up your links of who you're sending to who. And then those recordings of any of those meetings will also be stored in that class specifically so that those are also easier to access. It sets up a nice routine for students since they're already going into Canvas to turn in assignments. It helps out that they're also going into Canvas for their classes as well, just so they keep going into the same place over and over. It's accessible via the course navigation menu on the left-hand side. So once they access their class, they can just click on Zoom on the left-hand side so that they're able to get into the meeting. Multiple instructors and TAs can create and start class meetings. So if you're teaching with somebody else or if you have some TAs in charge of specific students, they're able to create their own meetings in Zoom in the class so that they can also manage those as well. If you have a Penn State account, the Zoom accounts are currently being provisioned automatically just to make sure that everybody is able to get in. It used to be in Canvas, if you clicked on Zoom without signing into Zoom first, it was not it was giving you some issues. Now, that will no longer be the case. As long as the student has a Penn State account, it creates the Zoom account for them without them having to sign into Zoom separately. So we're going to just take a look at the tool here now. And so I'm in a new Canvas class I just made. And this is available anywhere in Penn State's Canvas. So our manual courses or anything created by LionPath, anything along those lines, we will just click on our settings. And then navigation. And then we'll scroll down and we'll want to find Zoom within the list of tools here. It's usually down towards the bottom because these are in alphabetical order sometimes. I just usually find it down there. So we can click on it and we can click enable. And we can drag it to wherever we'd like. And we click on save. And then it will bring it up here for us to be and it'll be enabled on the left-hand side. So now if we click on Zoom over here, it'll give us the Zoom Canvas interface. By default, it'll show the meetings that we've created for this class only. If we click here, it'll make sure of that. And now if we click over on this All My Zoom Meetings and Recordings setting, it'll show us any meetings that we've created anywhere, even outside of Canvas. And it'll also show our previous meetings from wherever those have been created and any recordings anywhere. But the better thing is that it sorts here for our classes in Canvas. So to create a meeting, if I click on schedule a new meeting, the interface is very similar to the meeting creation page in Zoom itself. One of the things that I do want to mention that is not supported in the Canvas Zoom integration is breakout rooms. You cannot create breakout rooms in the Canvas tool. But apart from that, you're going to see pretty much all the same settings. So you can create your date and set the time. Whether you want registration to be required, where video is set automatically. One of the things that you will want to check, and I had this set previously, so you might just want to check this setting in your meeting options, is this only authenticated users can join setting. If you want to be able to pick Penn State from within here on this setting, you'll want to have it enabled outside of Canvas in Zoom itself to be able to check it. But this setting will allow it so that only people who are authenticated through web access will be able to access your Zoom meeting. And then you can also click to have it just start a recording automatically. And then if we click save, it'll give us our meeting settings. And it'll give us the meeting that we can then copy and paste to. It'll give us the meeting invitation text so that we can copy and paste that to a student and send it via email or anything along those lines. But students will also be able to access the meeting from the Zoom tool itself. Then some of this is going to be a little difficult to show off since I have Zoom running right now. But to start your meeting then, you would be able to click Start. And then if you would like to remove a meeting, you can delete it here. And then after the meetings have finished, they will show up in your previous meetings tab. And then any recordings that have been created will show up in the Cloud Recordings tab. These will be viewable by anybody in the class. So if there was something where you were having a group of students do a meeting together and they were to record it, all students in the class would be able to see that recording if it were saved. Then to view those recordings, you can click here, and then you can either download or actually view the recordings via the web. And this I've seen has been useful for some students that have had bandwidth issues and are unable to attend the lectures directly. They have still been able to view the cloud recordings without issues. Those lectures can still be viewed by students that have been having trouble with connection. One thing I did want to mention, now that I think about it, is there are some integrations with Zoom that we're waiting for a couple security enhancements for to be able to enable for Penn State. And one of those is a calendar integration that will allow these Zoom meetings to show up in a student's Canvas calendar, and also the conversations integration, which will allow these Zoom meetings to also show up in a student's Canvas inbox. Those are currently available, but we are waiting for some security enhancements to be able to turn those on. There are some upcoming features that I did want to mention. Of course, it does this to me. Okay. They're working on a Canvas roster whitelist that will allow students that are on the Canvas roster to access the Zoom meeting while keep putting everybody else into a waiting room. They're working on live transcription, which they hope to have done in August, which will allow you to turn on captioning for a meeting, and it'll have an AI transcription to create subtitles for it. It won't fix any accessibility concerns, but it will at least have a transcription for students to be able to read while a meeting's going on and also be viewable during the recording. The ability for students to create meetings, that's another one where we're waiting on some enhancements. Students can, by default in Zoom, well, in the Zoom integration that is available for students to be able to create meetings. We currently do not have that turned on at the moment because any student will basically receive this interface where they can schedule a meeting, and there's no filtering or anything along those lines. So any student created meeting is still going to show up in this list. Any student recording is also going to show up in this list. So we've reached out to Zoom to work out some enhancements so that maybe the student meetings can be filtered out or can only be viewable by certain individuals so that it doesn't just really clog up this interface here. And that was really the quick once over for that. So I'm going to check our questions here so that we can, oh, sorry. So I'm just reading through some of the questions. Breakout rooms in Canvas is one of the options that they're currently working on enabling, but it has not been able to be enabled just yet. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just going to pull up the Zoom roadmap for a second. I'm not seeing breakout rooms as a hard and fast date of upcoming yet, but it is what they're working on. Currently, the only workaround would really be to create the meeting outside of Canvas and then send that link to the students. Yes, Zoom is set up in Canvas currently, so you are able to go into any Canvas class and enable Zoom. Sorry, I'm just going through the questions here. Eric, I'm going to check out the breakout rooms. And I think it was just you're not able to pre-assign breakout rooms in Canvas, but I'm going to take a look at that and I will make a note. Eric asked a question about the whiteboard being disabled. I believe that was because of security issues with Zoom bombing, where individuals were accessing a Zoom meeting and then just writing onto the whiteboard before they could be stopped. And so this was just part of a blanket security procedure just to stop as much Zoom bombing from happening as possible. Renee asked, what about those with limited PSU accounts? And I actually tested this today. For anybody with a limited PSU account, and if the email address does not end in @psu.edu, it does not create a Zoom account for them. And I can actually show you what that looks like. So if I go into that same Zoom class here, and I'm masquerading as a limited account, it will give me an issue saying that my email is invalid because it's not a Penn State email address and I do not have a Zoom account. Eric brings up a good point that though you can't create breakout rooms in the Canvas version of Zoom, you can edit them in the main tool after creating the meeting in Zoom. Is it possible to set up Zoom webinars through Canvas? I don't believe so, but let's just make sure. Make sure I didn't miss that previously. Okay, yeah, currently it's not available. I believe it's on the roadmap of feature enhancements though. John brought up something very good here. If you do get the same message that says your instructor's email is invalid, you may need to check to see if you had an alternate email set up in your account page on your account settings. Sometimes it will try to key off of a different email address. So if you do start to see an issue, you may just want to check your email addresses here. And if it's still giving issues, we can try to, might just want to try to remove that out. Eric asked, links in Canvas to recordings seem to expire pretty quickly. Are the recordings still available somewhere? I believe that may just be something with regards to the filter function here. But I'm going to make a note and take a look at that as well. Because if I go to another Canvas class, so let's take a look at one of our other classes, which has multiple recordings. I'm just navigating to another Zoom class I have. Okay, because here, let's see. So here is another Zoom class where I'm actually in as a student. And we have a recording that is from January 28th, 2020. So I'm wondering if it might be a filtering issue or maybe new recordings are having some issues there. I'm going to look into that for you. I'm just taking your name down here. Karen asked a great question. In Zoom Canvas, can we prevent students from downloading the Zoom recordings? I only want them to be able to view the recordings. I don't believe so, but that's another setting we can just check out right now. Because I'd rather make sure than say something from old information anyway. So let's check out our meeting settings in here. I am not seeing a means to keep them from downloading, but I'm going to add that to my list of enhancements to talk about. Barb asked, if you choose only authenticated users in your Canvas Zoom, can you go back to the settings in your regular Zoom and change it back to allow non-authenticated users, or does it have to remain the same to allow only authenticated users in Canvas? That setting will be meeting specific after you've set that in Canvas. So if you would like your default to still allow unauthenticated users in for that specific meeting that you've created, it will ensure that authentication needs to happen. Dawn asked in cloud recordings what needs to be enabled to make sure captioning takes place. We'll see more once they've released more information about the captioning itself. As of yet, I am not entirely sure. Brian asked, can I have a single meeting that is listed in 2 different Canvas courses? If you use the Canvas tool, I would say no, because when you create the meeting, it will add it into this class specifically. But what you are able to do is, so I'm going to take note of this class, this meeting here that I've just created. I'm going to copy the meeting ID, And I'm going to go into a different class where I'm also a teacher. And here I'm going to access Zoom. And as we can see here, we're in an empty class. I'm going to click Import Meeting. And we'll see if it lets me put in the meeting ID from a meeting created in another class. So I copied this from the other class. And so when I create it in the tool, it will let us know that this meeting was already associated with another Canvas course and cannot be imported into the class. What you could do to get around that, though, is create the meeting outside of Canvas, and then we'll just make sure that that actually happens too. With as many changes as Zoom makes, it's always good to just double check to make sure that the settings that were there before are still the same. So I've just created a new meeting in Zoom, and I'm going to copy the meeting ID for that. And I'm going to try this import meeting setting. This meeting could not be found in your Zoom account and could not be imported into this course. This actually brings up a good thing to mention is that anything you do in Zoom outside of Canvas can take a few minutes to register within the Canvas tool itself. I've noticed this before when I was changing my authenticated user settings to be able to allow for Penn State authentication, is that it wasn't showing up automatically. It was taking some time to register. So we'll just try importing here again for just one moment. Okay, I'm going to go back to the questions while we give that some time. Trisha asked, how is a meeting associated with your course? Is that only if you create the meeting from within Canvas? Yes, it's associated with that specific class in Canvas. If you create it in the Canvas tool, and then each class that you create a meeting in, that meeting will be associated with that class. I will got a question about these slides. Just showing the upcoming features slide again. I know this is a little delayed, but the upcoming features and some features that we are just waiting on enhancements for again are the Canvas roster whitelist, which will put users from your roster automatically into the room and anybody not in the class roster into a waiting room, which you will then allow them in when you start the meeting. The live transcription and captioning, the ability for students to create meetings, and conversations and Canvas calendar integration so that it will put an invite, it'll put the information in students' calendar or into their inbox when you create a Zoom meeting in their class. And some of these are upcoming and some of these we're waiting on security enhancements for. Jean asked, when students are logged into a given Canvas course, will their Zoom schedule show only the scheduled meetings for that course or all meetings for all courses? It will do either one for them, because it can either show you every meeting, which is generally clicked on via here, or by default, it's only going to show your course meetings, but there's also this checkbox filter here so that it will only show the meetings for that specific class. Just wanted to mention some conversation in the question and answer tool, which is very useful, and that is that Zoom meetings are uploaded into Kaltura. I apologize for all the dead air while I'm reading. Is there a way to keep track of who viewed the Zoom video? In the native Zoom client, in the native Zoom settings itself, I don't believe so. But I believe, and if someone may be able to help me out with this, I believe you can check to see who's viewed something in Kaltura if you were to host the Zoom recording in Kaltura. Judith mentioned a good question here that has also been answered. And it's about accessing student attendance at a Zoom class meeting. And there's a report feature that can be used for this purpose. The key point is it will only work if you have registered users enabled for the meeting. There's some good conversation going on in that question. I'd recommend checking it out. I do apologize for a lot of the dead air. It's we're still getting used to these remote sessions, and so. Yeah, sorry about that, Rungan. I was letting some of these attendance conversations um, generate a little bit and then see where I could insert any information, but it looks like these discussions are being handled pretty well, and I'm looking to see if there's any questions that I can help answer regarding that. I had seen a question about, yes, and you've been adding in a lot of very, very good information, so it's nice to be able to see. Miss Judith is making a good point. We're not seeing the chat or the answers, though, so I'm going to just going to stop my share for just a second. I'm going to see if I can generate one of those attendance reports.
Hey, Chris.
Yes?
Can you talk us through what you're doing right now?
Nope, sorry about that. I was checking to see if I could find any any meetings I had created to be able to generate an attendance report from. But from all the meetings that I've run, I had not run any with authenticated users to be able to generate said report. So I have now gone on to, here we go. Sheila asked, how can we save Zoom chat text after a meeting and make it available? I believe that's first going to have us start with enabling auto-saving chat. Let me make sure though. Sorry about that. So I've gone into my Zoom settings in my Zoom profile. And the first thing that I've done is I had to re-enable chat. And then this will allow chat to be automatically saved. And then this will automatically save the chat so that it will be available. But again, that's a setting that we're going to have to go into and change and alter ourselves in Zoom before it will begin to work. Gina asked a question about some of the best practices for drop-in office hours, and I think this is interesting. In particular, I'd appreciate hearing strategies for welcoming multiple students from multiple classes to a single Zoom meeting room. I'm thinking I'd want to enable the waiting room to admit students individually. Also, would I need to schedule outside of Canvas, then share the single Zoom location with all students? And some of the answers have been, I have an office hours meeting with wait enabled. This way I can admit and have multiple people in one room. And they do share the link with the students as an office room. Eric mentions, I can tell you how I've done it. I have everyone enter immediately. Then I move them to breakout rooms by the topic they are working on so they can work in small groups while moving from group to group. If you have two devices so that one can always sit in the main room to see when new students appear, this is very convenient. If I were to want to have a single office hours room for everybody, I probably also would create that meeting outside of Zoom. And so previously we had talked about trying to import a meeting I had just created. So let's see if that's going to allow us to do that now, just to make sure. I'll go over this again if we can get that to work. Okay, I'm going to make a note here to check out meeting imports and see why that's not doing it correctly. But when that is fixed, if you could create one Zoom meeting and be able to import that into multiple classes, which I will check again, that would then have it at least display in each class individually for the students. Otherwise, I would probably create the meeting outside of Zoom and share that link with my students and having the wait enabled on that. She asked, will Zoom TAs be available in the fall? And I'm going to ask for a little bit of clarification there. I know that within Canvas, anybody with a TA role is able to create Zoom meetings in Canvas, but is this more of a Zoom technology assistance? tech assistant to mute and control the waiting room. Oh. So one of my main takeaways from a lot of this conversation, especially regarding the attendance feature, is that there might be room for a knowledge base article regarding taking attendance with your Zoom class and being able to import that into the gradebook. So I'm going to bring that forth to our ITLD folks and see if that might be something that we could put out then for folks. Since this is going to be something we're all going to be doing, it might be good to be able to have some hard and fast information on it. Sorry, Cindy, if I accidentally said outside of Zoom, I did mean outside of Canvas. Sorry about that. So I'm taking note of all these questions that are coming through, and I'm going to see if there's any more information that I can grab for any of these, and then see if there's any knowledge that we're going to want to put out into an article or anything along those lines. Were there any other quick questions here before we were done that I might be able to help out with? Did want to mention, one of our panelists has messaged ITLD and she said they won't know about tech TAs for the fall until the university makes a decision about classes. I just want to make sure everybody was able to hear that. Lynn, more specifics on polling best practices. I'm seeing some questions about polls. I'm going to look into that some more, just because it's something I want to make sure I give a correct answer on. And so I'm just taking some notes down here, and then I'm taking some notes down for a couple of different questions, and then I'm going to either get some communication out regarding these, or at least be able to email some of you folks individually with any answers that I find. Julie asked, does anyone experience teaching an activity-based class via Zoom while also managing the Zoom by themselves? And that's a good question, because it does seem like it would be difficult to do so once you're trying to, instruct and also do an activity while also keeping track of chat and the waiting room and things along that line. And so I think, if nothing else, just personally, I think having multiple displays is very useful. If you're able to have two separate screens running, especially if you're sharing with one and able to keep all your other information in a second screen. So you're able to at least, look back and forth to be able to check that information. Or as some folks have mentioned, sometimes even multiple devices. I know these are not optimal, but if you do have two devices running Zoom, you're able to both manage and participate at the same time, if that's what it comes to, and it can be very useful. Just there's some more agreement with the second display. And I didn't, somebody would not have a waiting room up, but I would chat up in one part of the screen and then be doing an activity using a dock camera for math work and having students doing poll type activities. And then Nathan mentions having two devices was very useful. Zoom would make my computer crash and I could go on seamlessly. So if you had Zoom running in two just separate instances, if one went down, at least you'd have the other running. And this is all something that we're all getting used to together. So we can't, none of us are expecting us all to have the perfect classroom right out of the bat, but we're all working together to be able to get things to where we need them to be, and it's been going very well. So I would just like to mention that my three main takeaways of things that I would like to be able to answer for everyone here is more about breakout rooms, especially in Canvas and when that'll be available, polling, and then attendance and getting that into your Zoom, into your gradebook. So I'm going to work to make sure that there are some communications or articles regarding this, or just some more answers that I can provide at a later date. Other than that, you've all been very helpful with the question and answer tool. My email address is cjr201@psu.edu. And so yes, any questions you have or just any tips or things that you think that would be able to help out, just definitely send that in an email to me. Is it possible for you to compile the Q&A and send it to the registered users from this session? Are we able to do that, Kristen?
Kim, do you know that answer? If you can compile all the Q&A?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was thinking that that was not preserved, so we could try and do some workarounds here, but I'll see if I can find there, see if there's another alternative to the one that I thought it was.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that we can do that, but if we find a way, we can certainly send that out.
Well, if nothing else, I've done a big copy and paste of it to make sure that I don't miss anything that I would like to be able to get answered for you. But yeah, just again, I would like to thank everybody for attending, and you've all been great and definitely been very helpful with me as we get through some of these issues with doing an online presentation of this nature. And I would just like to say thank you all, and you have a good day. Did you have anything to close with, Kristen?
Nope, that's everything. Thanks,
All right.
Chris.
Yep. Thank you all very much.